Zwift's Trainer Difficulty. Is it a gradient adjustment or virtual gears? And is riding it anything less than max trainer difficulty cheating? We'll get into all those questions in this deep dive into Zwift's Trainer Difficulty. Let's jump right into it. So how does Zwift work with your Smarttrainer? Well, it sends a signal including your aerodynamics, your rolling resistance, your weight, but most importantly for this video, the grade of the route that your avatar is riding in game. And your Smarttrainer generates a resistance according to all those inputs. You pedal against that resistance and your trainer sends your power level back to Zwift. And that will determine how your avatar moves in game. So what was the origin of trainer difficulty? Well, when Zwift came out in 2014, many of the older Smarttrainers had limited grade simulation capabilities, for example 10%. And if the in-game route went up to 15%, why, the trainer could still only simulate 10%. And many trainers had limited power ratings. And if you rode for extended periods of time at those limits, why, some of the trainers were susceptible to overheating. Well, how to deal with that? Introduce trainer difficulty, so you could wind down the grade simulation. And I think that also explains why the default trainer difficulty is set at 50%. So no trainers are maxing out. Because even today, some of the lower end trainers have limited ability to simulate higher grades, but they are still legitimate to ride on Zwift using the trainer difficulty slider. So how does this work? Well, if the in-game route is at 12%, for example, and you set your trainer difficulty at 50%, then your Smarttrainer will simulate a resistance as if the route were 6% grade. So how do you adjust your trainer difficulty? From the Zwift game home screen, click on your profile at the top right-hand corner. Then go to My Settings, Hardware, and then trainer difficulty is right at the top. You can adjust it from max to off. Default is 50%. And then click OK. And now you have your trainer difficulty set up for whichever event or route that you're going to ride. Note that trainer difficulty does not apply to workouts. But you can also change the trainer difficulty while you're riding. Let me show you that. While you're riding, click on Menu, Settings, again on Hardware, and then you can adjust the trainer difficulty to whatever setting suits you. Click OK, and then back. So you can adjust the trainer difficulty during a ride. So say you have the trainer difficulty at 100%, and then you come up to a very stiff climb. Why, you can adjust the trainer difficulty down to 50%, and once you've completed the climb, you can adjust it back up to 100%. Now, for the purpose of this video, it's helpful to conceptualize two different worlds. Your avatar riding on Zwift, and you riding on your Smarttrainer. It will all make sense over the course of this video. So what happens when you move that slider? Well, when it's at max, the grade that your avatar is riding in-game on Zwift and the gradient that your trainer is simulating are the same. But as you move the trainer difficulty slider to lower percentages towards off, the grade that your trainer simulates becomes much shallower, while your avatar is still climbing the same grade in-game. At 50% trainer difficulty, the grade that your trainer is simulating is half the grade that your avatar is riding on Zwift. Let's watch that again. As I move the trainer difficulty to the left, the grade that the trainer is simulating becomes shallower and shallower. But the grade that your avatar is riding on Zwift is still the same. And that's how it works. Lots of fun. Now, the trainer difficulty does not reduce the energy required to complete the climb. From basic physics, the energy to move a mass up a height is dependent on the mass, the gravitational constant, and the height. So it doesn't make a difference what the grade angle is or what the length of the climb is. The energy to climb the hill is the same, so don't think that by moving the slider from max towards off that you're reducing the amount of work that you'll have to do to get to the top of that climb. Now we've just seen that the energy or work required to get to the top of the climb is equal to the mass of the rider, or to be exact, the mass of the rider and the bike, times the height of the climb. And how do you produce that energy? Well, by putting out power on your trainer. And the energy that you produce will be equal to the power level you're putting out times time. So for example, riding at 200 watts for 10 minutes. And then what happens? So as you're putting out power on your trainer, you'll be going up that climb. Or at least your avatar will on Zwift. It does not reduce the grade that your avatar on Zwift tests the climb. Yes, adjusting trainer difficulty, say to 50%, adjusts the grade resistance on your trainer to stimulate 6%. But your avatar in the Zwift game is still going up a 12% grade. Yep, your poor avatar still has to tackle that 12% grade, even though you on your trainer are only battling a 6% grade. And to reiterate, adjusting your trainer difficulty does not reduce the elevation of the climb. Now there's one very, very special case that I need to talk about, and that's for descents. When Zwift designed the game, they decided that they would cut the virtual grade of the descents in half. So if the descent was 12% in game, why, it would feel on your trainer that you're going down a descent of only 6%. Now, why did they do that? Well, for those descents, they wanted you to feel some resistance when you're going down a hill. But how does that work with trainer difficulty? Well, with trainer difficulty, Zwift's already cut the grade in half from 12 to 6%. And if you slide the trainer difficulty down to 50%, well, then it's going to cut it in half again. So a 12% descent adjusted to 6% will now be cut in half again, and your trainer will simulate a descent of only 3%. And then you'll have significant resistance to pedal against. You won't spin out. And that can be a real advantage. If you're racing down a hill and your competitor has left the trainer difficulty at 100%, well, that competitor has very little resistance to pedal against and not producing a lot of power. And if you've reduced your trainer difficulty to 50%, well, you have significantly more resistance to pedal against, can generate more power, and you can beat that competitor going down the hill. That's just one of the quirks of the way that Zwift works. But you can take advantage of that quirk if you know how trainer difficulty works on descents. And now let's get into what you've all been waiting for, that hot topic of virtual gears. Now I want to come back to this concept of two parallel worlds, your avatar riding on Zwift and you riding on your trainer. Now when the trainer difficulty is at 100%, the grade of the climb that your avatar is doing on Zwift and the grade that your trainer is simulating are the same. So for example, 12% and 12%. And you're using the same gear. So for example, you'll be using a 34-tooth gear on the bike on your trainer, and your avatar will be using a virtual 34-tooth gear. But now what happens when you reduce that trainer difficulty, say to 50%? Well, your avatar is still riding up that 12% grade, but now your trainer is only simulating a 6% grade. But what about the gears? Well, you're still on that same gear on your trainer, but the gear that your avatar is virtually using is much, much bigger. And the gear that your avatar is now virtually riding on Zwift is complementary to the change of grade that you're riding on your trainer. So the virtual gear would be equal to the actual gear divided by the trainer difficulty. For example, if the gear that you were using on your trainer bike was 34 teeth, then with the trainer difficulty set at 50%, the virtual gear that your avatar would be using would be 68 teeth. So I hope this explains the dual nature of trainer difficulty. Yes, it's gradient scaling to your trainer that feels like virtual gears. So let's talk about why you might want to use trainer difficulty. Well, first off, if you have an older style trainer that's limited to the grade that it can simulate, You can dial back the trainer difficulty so that you won't max out your trainer grade simulation, and you'll avoid potentially overheating the trainer, requiring it to generate high resistance at low flywheel speeds for prolonged periods of time. Now, if you don't have one of the older style trainers, why else might you want to reduce your trainer difficulty? So a reason that most of us would use trainer difficulty is to overcome the trainer resistance on those really steep hills. On Watopia, that might include Alpe de Zwift, the epic KOM reverse, of course, that climb up to the radio tower, the grade. In France, on Ventop, the Innsbruck KOM. And we've got some shorter but really, really steep climbs in Yorkshire and in Richmond. And of course, any ride on a climb portal. So depending on the gears that you have on the bike on your trainer, you may not even be able to turn the pedals and overcome resistance to climb up one of those hills, or at least not long enough to get to the top of that hill. So for example, for me, I have a bike with a standard crankset, 5339 on the front, and I'm riding a 12 to 25 cassette on the rear. You might be riding a compact crankset with 5034 chain rings and an 11 to 34 cassette. So your lowest gear would be 34 on the front, 34 on the back, 1-to-1. But even that might not allow you to overcome the resistance on those very, very steep grades, especially on those very, very long climbs. So you can dial the trainer difficulty back and be able to ride up those hills. So by reducing your trainer difficulty effectively on your trainer, you'll be riding longer, lower grade hills. So you can smooth out your power output, and you can avoid that really low cadence, high torque pedaling on some of those really steep hills. Why, you can get down below 50 RPM and avoid having to stand on your pedals, staying seated while you're climbing up those hills. From the perspective of your avatar, it's like having access to bigger gears with the same effect, but from a different perspective. And by reducing the gradient, you also reduce the change in gradients. So at 50% trainer difficulty, a 6% change in grade effectively only becomes a 3% change in grade. And you reduce the number of shifts, or you may not even have to do any shifts to accommodate that grade change. It makes for a more relaxing ride. And one last reason I want to talk about, and that is to increase the resistance on downhills, so you avoid spinning out or running out of gears. You'll have some resistance to pedal against, so you can generate some power. Now, why might you want to leave the trainer difficulty at max? Well, it most closely replicates your real-life experience. That is, if you were using the bike that you have on your trainer with the gears on that bike. So you feel the full grade, and you feel the full grade changes. And for eSport World Championship races and official Everesting, you have to have the trainer difficulty at max or 100%. But take note, for most races on Zwift, why you don't have to have the trainer difficulty at 100%. In fact, most racers use a trainer difficulty that's much less. And same thing, to get the Everesting badge on Zwift, you don't have to have the trainer difficulty at 100%. Now, I just said to get the most real-life experience, leave your trainer difficulty set at 100%. But there's a bit of a nuance to that. Let me explain. Say you live in an area where there really aren't any mountains or big hills. So the crankset and the cassette that you have fitted to the bike that you ride outdoors and the bike that you happen to have on your trainers has a standard crankset and a pretty small range of gears on the cassette. For example, 5339 crankset and a 1225 cassette. Now say you're going to head off to the mountains, perhaps take a trip to the Alps. Would you still use that standard crankset and that small range cassette? Probably not. More likely, you'd fit a compact crank and a wider range cassette to your bike. So a 5034 crankset and an 1134 cassette. But would you change the crankset and cassette on the bike that you have on trainer to ride hills on Zwift? Instead, you dial back the trainer difficulty to simulate a compact crankset. So for example, going from that standard crankset cassette combination that I spoke about to a compact crankset and larger cassette, why the equivalency would be setting your trainer difficulty to 64%. So set your trainer difficulty, so to best replicate the in real life experience, set your trainer difficulty to mimic the gears that you're most likely to use on the route that you're riding on in Zwift. Now I want to go to an in-game example. Say I'm riding up to the radio tower and the grade is 13%. I have the trainer difficulty set to 100% or max. And on my bike on the trainer, I'm using a gear combination of 34-34. And with that combination, I'm putting out 289 watts and grinding at 67 RPM. Why? I just can't hold that power level all the way to the top. So what do? And let's see what happens. So I've changed my trainer difficulty to 66%, but now I'm riding in a virtual gear combination of 34-58. And I'm only putting out 184 watts, and I can increase my cadence to 78 RPM. And that combination I can hold. And that's a very good way that you can use trainer difficulty when you're riding on Zwift on those very, very steep hills. Well, this has been quite a long video, so time to wrap up. Trainer difficulty adjusts the resistance or grade of your trainer. It does not change the hill elevation. It does not change the in-game hill grade. It does not change the work that you'll have to do to climb the in-game hill. It can mimic a wider range of gears for you. It can help you avoid those very low cadence, high torque efforts on steep climbs and smooth out power fluctuations. It may reduce the number of gear changes that you'll have to make. And if you have an older trainer, reduce the amount of strain on the trainer when you're doing long, sustained hills. As a default, just leave your trainer difficulty at 50%, and you'll do all right. For the most realistic in real life experience, set your trainer to max or adjust it, as I spoke earlier in the video, depending on the gears on the bike that you're using on your trainer. For racing on Zwift, set the trainer difficulty to approximately 30%, except if you are riding an eSport World Championship or doing an official Everesting ride. By doing so, you'll get all the advantages that I spoke about earlier. You won't have any of those low cadence, high torque efforts. You'll be able to maintain a higher cadence, perhaps reduce the number of shift changes that you have to make, and avoid spinning out on steep descents. For myself, I usually leave the trainer difficulty at 50%, though I do adjust it when I'm doing steep climbs. And if I can leave you with one thought, it's going back to that concept of dual works, or the dual nature of trainer difficulty. Gradient scaling and virtual gears at the same time. They're complementary concepts, fundamental to trainer difficulty. So I hope this deep dive into trainer difficulty has helped you. I know it's taken me considerable time and effort to put it all together. And if it has been helpful, why, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click on that notification bell. And we'll see you next time on Endurance Sweat. In the meantime, train hard and have fun.